Good morning, and welcome to the Us Review. Today is Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Love and Addiction. Dill or Depart. I am your host, Carla Davis Luster, and here is where I discuss controversial relationship topics, highlighting the male and the female perspective when necessary. I'd like to recap the previous week's information, which was Season 2, Episode 4, Prenup. Should I do or should I don't? I talked about some pros and cons of a prenup, what should be included in a prenup, and I talked about what is a sunset clause. So if you'd like to know that information, you can go back and review last week's episode. You can also find all of my previous topics housed on YouTube at Ask Carla. Once again, if you are just tuning in, this is the Us Review. I'm your host, Carla Davis Luster, and this is Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Love and Addiction, Deal or Depart. For legal purposes, and to add this disclaimer, I do want to make clear that any of the topics that I talk about is merely an opinion. Please note that the information discussed on the Us Review is for informational purposes only and should not be considered, as professional or financial or legal advice. If you require such advice, I do recommend consulting a licensed advisor in the area of concern. So with that said, once again, if you're just tuning in, this is the Us Review, Season 2, Episode 5, Love and Addiction, Deal or Depart. Now, let me start by saying addiction can either be physical or behavioral. Although alcohol and tobacco are the most commonly recognized types of addictions, there are hundreds of medical and scientifically recognized addictions, such as cravings, compulsions, the inability to stop, and a lifestyle dysfunction could actually be considered an addiction. All of these things point to the existence of some type of addiction. Addiction is a complex disease. Let me say that again. Addiction is a disease. The type of addiction does not really matter. It is the underlying issue that causes the patient or the person to chase the pleasure feeling while incurring adverse consequences. There are so many types of addictions. To name a few, I'm going to name a few for you this morning. Food, sex, pornography, prostitution can be one. Shopping can actually be an addiction. The use of computers and video games, God knows these kids are totally on video games all day, every day, and it can become addictive. The internet, work can become addictive, an overachiever. Exercising, how many times have you seen someone that's anorexia, when they look in the mirror, they see fat. When we look at them, we look at someone and think, this person is malnutritious, they need to eat. Or bulimia, a person that's eating and then, regurgitating their food. That sounds gross, but that is an illness and can be an addiction. Alcoholism, substance abuse, these are the ones that are the major ones that we normally see and that a lot of people highlight on, but there's so many more. A spiritual obsession. A person can definitely have a spiritual obsession. How many times do you see these people, I don't want to call them crazy, but you see them with these megaphones and they're running around like all crazy. And instead of, being enticing and inviting people to, they're talking about come to Jesus, their behaviors is so, erratic. It's like, I don't do that. Is this what I'm going to have to do? And so you're looking at them really crazy, and it could be the person is just addicted with, this spiritual obsession. Cutting is one. I have experienced and did know a young lady that was cutting herself, and it was a teenager, and I won't go into detail about the story, but, I just pray that the family really got her some help because cutting is an addiction and cutting can be a coping mechanism. Gambling, how many times have we watched a movie or you see, and I refer to movies a lot as my references due to the fact that I am a writer and I have wrote many little movie clips to support my books. How many times have you seen a movie and the person is gambling and they lose everything? You got people chasing them, want to beat them up because they've spent their money, they've lost their house, they've lost their family, they're just down on their last leg because of gambling. Gambling is an addiction. Stealing, some people steal for just the fun of it. Just the act of being able to get away with something is the hype and the chase and the pleasure, and they still, because they're addicted to it. Hunting, When I think of hunting, I think of the movie, back to the movie, Mr. Brooks, when he had this obsession with, kind of hunting down people and killing them. It was, it was he got off on it. And I think what really shocked him and really, shocked him back into trying to do something right and quitting, it was that he found that his daughter had the same obsession, and she was kind of following in his footsteps, and that kind of jarred him. So hunting, that's what makes me think about that. Serial killers or whatever. I could go on and on and on about the various types of addictions. Once again, you can Google it, look it up, if it's something that you think you may have, if I'm not listening in here, because I'm not going to talk about everything on this show. Today I'm going to talk about just 3 things surrounding addiction. I'm going to talk about the effects an addiction can have actually on a relationship. I'm going to talk about some signs that someone may very well have a problem, and then I'm going to give some suggested information where to get help. But before I go into it, I am going to introduce my preface from my novel, I'm Not a Homewrecker Opportunist Maybe, Chapter 5, entitled A Fool for More. How appropriate for this session here, episode, A Fool for More. I'm going to start at page 41, paragraph 1, but before I do that, I definitely want to show you my novel, which is I'm Not a Homewrecker Opportunist Maybe, right here, where I'm going to take my preface. I'm also going to show you my 2 other books, which is the first one. I used The Woman Tells in season 1. So once again, all of my episodes are housed at YouTube. You can go back and look at season 1. And this was the novel, The Woman Tells. This is my first novel, the kickoff of the series. So that's that. And then last but not least, I do have a relationship color palette assessment guide. This started with, my article in the Waymaker Journal. And, if you purchase this, it's very fun. You can, it's a conversation starter. You can use it at game night, whatever. So this is available for you now. And all of these can be purchased at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, AskCarlaDL.com, or at the 900 bookstore. It's called the Volumes Bookstore on the 5th floor at the Bloomingdale's building, 900 North Michigan Avenue. But once again, let's talk about the preface. I'm Not a Homewrecker Opportunist Maybe. I'm going to start on page 41. And it talks about something like this. I talked to my girl. She was all for it. She had heard about these clubs and how much money the girls were making. She knew more than me. She said, you could bartend if you knew how. They made great tips. You could wait tables and they made generous tips. But the real money was the last 2. You could dance or become an escort, the latter paying the most. She went on and on that we were young and in a city that no one really knew us except people on campus. She also went on to talk about my boy was just trying to look out for us with this, trying to push us to do this. He loves you, blah, blah, blah. Now, if your mom or whomever have ever told you about bad influences, this girl in this book, she's one. My older sister never really cared for my girl because she said that she was that influencer and not a good one. I was extremely uncomfortable and doubtful. Here was the kicker. When we met with the professor, which was her boy, to discuss it, it seemed like they had already talked about it. He said that he would schedule a time to meet his boy at the club and talk to him. My professor sprang on us that the deal for his boy to take us, in order to be able to do all of this, he got 20% of whatever we made. I was really taken back. I began to argue with him. I asked, what are you, our pimp? He said, or started laughing and saying, babe, I care about you. He let this slip. Now, he let something slip out. All the girls I bring to my boy are good with that. It's a business proposal. I'm not a homewrecker opportunist, maybe. Gotta get it. Anyways, A Fool for More, chapter 5. A Fool for More. That's basically kind of what an addiction is. You're chasing more of that pleasure, or maybe the first time feel that you got and you're trying to get it again. Or, like I talk about a gambler, he's chasing that first win, and I'm going to win. I'm going to get, the same thing and wind up losing everything. However, if you are just tuning in, this is the Us Review, Season 2, Episode 5, Love and Addiction. We're talking about Deal or Depart, Love and Addiction this morning. Let me say this. Addiction can manifest itself in any kind of way. and it's different in each person. What a person, and it comes about and it manifests once again differently, depending on what the actual addiction is or what a person is actually addicted to. It can manifest itself in various ways. Like I'm saying, it can be a behavioral or a physical addiction. I'm not going to separate them today, talking about them, the physical from the behavioral, whatever. I'm just going to simply speak in general and talk about some of the things or some of the signs that people exemplify when they could possibly have an addiction and hiding a problem, physical or a behavioral one. So let me get started. You start to see a change in, in their personality and their behavior and what they're, you're used to seeing them act, the way that you're used to seeing them act. They start to have this inability to complete obligations, their tasks. They may start missing work, unable to go because they're sick or whatever else, school or at home. Any of these things that are the norm for them, you start to see kind of like a personality change. And it's kind of, when it's gotten serious, it's obvious that it's something going on. And you as a loved one, start to pay attention to that. There's something to that. They know, here's another thing. They're no longer interested in the things that they used to do. They abandon a known hobby that you, as their loved one, knew to be a passion for them, and that they lived, they breathed it. It was just something that they were just really good at, and they loved it. And all of a sudden, they're no longer interested in it. They're just interested in this one thing, the addiction. They become very edgy. Typically this is centered around some drugs or whatever else. They start lying and making up excuses about various things. And so the lying and making up excuses, that can be with any addiction, just trying to hide it, just trying to not allow you into their world, or for you to know exactly just how far gone. And they typically, a person that is addicted, a lot of times they don't even know that it's got them. Some do, some don't. It's they're just thinking that it's just something that they like to do, and I don't have a problem. It's just I like to do it, and I'm gonna do it. They start to get edgy. They start to get a little defensive or whatever about it. Should you approach them trying to talk about it, they're unable to quit. They're simply unable to quit. They spend a lot of time engaging in the behavior that's causing them their downfall. Once again, I said a personality change. They are so caught up and consumed with this thing to the point that it's probably obvious to everyone around you. And at that point, your loved one or whomever it may be, if you have that opportunity, if you have, you care about them and you really want to try to fix it and work on it, definitely if you're in a relationship or intervention. I know that you guys have heard about them, seen them, may have been a part of one. Intervention is something that could possibly happen, but make sure that it is with people that really care about them and not just people that want to, just be a part of something and, saying that they, doing an intervention or whatever. It needs to be private. It needs to be very well thought out. They have developed this dependency on this one thing that they're addicted to. Stealing can be, a sign. Stuff start coming up missing, and I'm going to go to the extreme, TVs and things of the sort where they can sell, and this is due to trying to support maybe a substance habit or something that they have to pay for in order to have this habit. It becomes, they become untrustworthy. Their parents start to deteriorate, and how many times do we see this? Once again, I will always say that I use movies and stuff like that to reference, and to get points across, because hopefully you have seen a movie or whatever, or you can go back and look at it and you can see what I'm talking about. They start to be very sick, their health is deteriorating, weight changes up or down. It would be up if it's a food fetish. They've they have a food addiction where they're just consistently eating, compulsively eating. That's up. If weight is down, it could possibly be that they are substituting food for getting high, using their money to get high, get alcohol or whatever else. That's usually a weight loss. Keep in mind, don't, if a person's having a bad day and they are out of character for a day or two, or they're going through something, don't just say automatically they have an addiction. It could be just something they're going through. I already mentioned eating habits. Keep in mind the addiction to food once again is excessive, and I've talked about that. However, at the end of the day, Here's the thing. You know your partner, you know your loved one, and you know their usual routine. You should be able to tell when something is wrong and something is out of whack, and someone is acting out of character. And it's time to, for one, they could be screaming out for help and don't know how to ask for it. But their behaviors and everything that they're doing in the surroundings cause them to be screaming out. You need to pay attention and try to reach out. Now, how can these things, all of these things, and I could just go on and on and on about some of the signs, which you can go on and on and on just about the types of addictions and everything. However, those are the ones that I just talked about. Now, how can these things affect the relationship? Let's answer that. It can affect that in many, many ways. Let's talk about it. First of all, your partner, once again, and that I mentioned earlier, is unable to complete obligations due to the fact that they're consumed with this thing that they're addicted to. So that's an issue. They start lying, causing, you're like, they're doing things and they're lying about it, and they're lying. So quite obviously that's going to cause an argument or cause some conflict between the two of you, or whatever the scenario is. I talk about relationships on this place on this show. However, this can apply to a lot of things. They start to hide things, and that they're hiding them, and it's just a bunch of confusion. You start to have financial issues because they're using money to support this thing. That is definitely going to be a relationship killer. The emotional, it's very emotional. It's very, just your situation is totally out of whack due to the fact of this addiction. Now, here's one thing that I want you to be aware of, and I know you are if you're someone going through this. What's very important, today's show is called Love and Addiction, Deal or Depart. Deal, obviously, is that you're trying to help this person get through it and you're going to stay with them. Depart is you're leaving. This is not something I signed up for. I can't do this anymore. The situation with this, I'm going to say children. If children is in the mix, you want to consider what it is and which way you're going to go, due to the fact that if it's a volatile, very violent, very disruptive, dysfunctional type of a situation, depending on how long it's going on, you may have to consider doing a depart, due to the fact that you have children to be concerned about. That is very serious, and I could go on and on about that, but you get my gist. Sexually, I'm going to say sexually, maybe they have a porn and a prostitution type of addiction, and it's got them so to it's came between your sex life, if you are a couple, in that they no longer are attracted to what you guys do. It's the chase and the mysteriousness of those things that they like and prefer, and it's caused an issue with you guys within the relationship. However, any of the substances, alcohol, or various things that if you're addicted to something that you're intaking into your body, it can definitely cause an impact on fertilization, shall I say? Meaning, can cause an non-fertilization or an impact on fertilization, meaning that you can't have children. And if you're a young couple or whatever, and this is your situation, that could be a very problem, a very big problem. If you're if you don't want children or whatever, and you made up in your mind, you're gonna still see this through, and it doesn't matter, then that's you, and God bless you. But it can definitely impact your fertilization. Communication, there's a communication breakdown that goes without saying. Destructive behaviors, I just talked about that. If that's the situation and there are kids involved, then that is definitely a situation. Out of all of this, you're definitely going to develop some mistrust and some hardship, due to the communication is broken down, a lot of emotions is going on, everything is high and out of whack. So with that said, you got to get some help. What are some of the forms of treatment that can actually help you if you are going through this? I'm going to just, name off a few. And once again, there's always other avenues. There are always a million other ways that you can do things, but I'm going to name off a few. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT. This deals with PTSD, basically centered around depression and anxiety as it relates to, the behaviors of this person. It can help you to think, it helps a person to think differently about their experiences and their relationships, because I think that, it's an erratic behavior where, they, I think everything is against them or something. I'm not totally familiar with it because I didn't, totally, do the research on that specific thing. I researched some of the forms of help that you could get if you were going through, something with someone that's addicted. The next thing you can do is a dialectical behavioral therapy. This deals with psychological disorders. If it's someone that's addiction and it's something going on psychologically, or they're dealing with interpersonal conflicts, this is what that deals with. Obviously, rehab is around for alcoholism, substance abuse. They even have a 12-step program for shopping. There was a movie about it. Once again, there was a movie about it. There's for rehab. So there's a rehab in a situation, some type of a program and treatment for just about everything out here. You just have to find it, right? The one that I really like for relationships and couples and families is family therapy. This is an avenue that allows a family and family members to learn more about a loved one's condition, where maybe sometimes people are draw back and want to leave a situation because they don't understand it and they don't understand how to deal with it. Family therapy will help everyone involved, including children, get them the help that they need should the family be involved with someone that is addicted. They will take you through all of the steps of this and help you to understand it, so maybe you guys can get through that. I am going to give some statistics on what happens within a couple that deals with addiction. MAT is another form of treatment. That is a medication. This is a medication assisted type of a treatment for someone that is addicted to, I guess, medication. I had an aunt that was addicted to volumes, and she got to the place where she almost seemed like she couldn't function before she took Valium, and it became an addiction. And I think that is definitely an addictive type of situation. How many times do we turn on the TV and they're telling you to take these pills or take this medicine or whatever else, and it's going to help you with this? However, when you look at the side effects, because they have to list them, you're going to go be blind, stupid, and crazy. You're going to fix this, but you're going to be blind, stupid, and crazy and addicted on the other hand. So anything that you're doing or taking, even if you're just going for a doctor's visit and they prescribe something that you don't know anything about, you do have the right to ask what it is, what are the side effects, is it addictive, and if it's something that you're not really comfortable with, you don't have to take it. You can ask if they can really just subscribe something else. Now, right now I'm going to call off a Get Help Now hotline that if you are dealing with any of this that I've talked about today, any of this, it's called a Get Help Now hotline. The number is, and hopefully you can get it, write it down, or you can come back and look at it and get it off of here. It's going to be housed at YouTube. 330-953-3300. Get Help Now hotline is 330-953-3300. For the last time, Get Help Now hotline is 330-953-3300. At the end of the day, being in a relationship with someone with an addiction can be extremely hard, let alone if you're already dealing with the additional issues added, putting on top of that your everyday life endeavors, going to work, dealing with the bills, dealing with the children, dealing with whatever situation, and then you add addiction on top of that. It's extremely hard, and I do recommend definitely that you get some form of help to help you through it, so that everyone, once again, that family therapy to help you understand what's going on and what are the actions that you can take to help you get through it. According to, let me give you some statistics, 3% of marriages end because of addiction. Well, that is a low percentage, and the positive side of that means that 97% are able to work through it, because they've probably took into some program that have helped them to do it. So that was a good statistic to me. Here's some more. Americans between the age of 25 and 34 has the highest addiction rate, meaning that between the ages of 25 and 34, those are the people that, get most addicted. Now, maybe it's saying that it starts at 25 or whatever else. It's not saying that someone younger or older is, they don't have addictions or whatever. It's just saying that the highest rate of people that have an addiction is between the ages of 25 and 34. Here's another one: 14.1 million people suffer from alcoholism abuse, or are suffering from a dependent type of a substance that they're addicted to. Alcohol, I will say this, is the third highest reason women seek divorce in marriages. So we're talking about relationships this morning, and it's the eighth highest for men. So it is truly a relationship killer, if there's an addiction going on. 34.6% of all divorces is due to substance abuse, meaning that out of 100% of divorces that happen, 34.6% are the reasoning behind it is due to substance abuse. That's a third of divorces is all in a whole conglomerate of substance abuse that causes, marriages or relationships to end. That's huge. Well, ultimately, before I move on, I am going to tell a really quick story. And this was about a young person, and I'm going to tell it really quickly. I'm not going to name any names. However, I'm a vendor. I do, work, I typically work with a lot of college students or whatever, that have worked with me at my place of business. I did take the opportunity one year to hire some high school students, and I went around, went to several high schools that I do business with or whatever, print, whatever. And I conducted some interviews, and I want to say that this one particular young man stood out so much. He was so smart, so impressive. I'm like, I've got to have him on my team. However, it did come about that, he's had some issues, and I didn't know to what extent, with like going off or whatever else and stuff. Needless to say, he came to work for me for a long time, did some other stuff, and then one day, he came into work, and this was just so out of character. He went off, called me names. I was trying to correct the behavior that he was doing. Called me names, even threw something at me. It was just, oh boy, it was, I was just like really just floored. I couldn't even believe it was happening. And the instance of the way it happened, it was like, what is wrong with you? Well, one thing led to another. I had to have him escorted out, and of course, obviously, he, was terminated. And it went on, he had gone and stuff like that. I was definitely very hurt. I had spoken to the principal, and she said that, we thought that you had gotten through to him because, he's had these behavioral, issues, but, it seemed like he was doing very well because you dealt with him for the longest, and it seemed like you guys, he had no issues. And that happened, and that was like the big boomer. But I saw her at an event, and this was a little bit time after, and she came up to me and she said, I need to talk to you, because I know she knew that I had not had any contact after that. It was like, that was a done deal. She pulled me to the side to tell me that this young man had died due to taking something. I just got to say that this is a serious thing. I talk about relationships, and I talk about different things, controversial things that affect relationships. And I try to give, ways and help to how you can help to make it better. This was something that really touched me, and I'm trying not to get teared up this morning with that situation because, I was very fond of him. We went through that. He did that, shocked me, and just, we parted ways. And then the next time I speak about him, he's dead. He was only 18, maybe 19. I don't know if he had turned 19. I think it was 18. And headed for college, never made it. So if you're out there, try to get help if something has consumed you that you weren't even trying to allow to consume you. If you have loved ones that you know that there's something going on and you can do something about it, please do. Ultimately, addiction can be traumatizing to a relationship. However, it's a proven fact that you can survive with the statistics that I just called off to you. Now, there are other statistics that may say that there's a higher divorce rate or whatever. It's just the ones that I took, and every week I give all these high statistics. I just thought it was great, and I felt good about this one because what that said to me is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. both parties have to be willing to weather the storm together, or everybody have to be willing to weather the storm together in order for it to be a deal situation. You have to decide whether or not it's worth it. Is it too volatile? Is it going to take me down? At the end of the day, you don't want it to take you down, but you want to see this person get help, whatever the addiction is. It could be shopping, it could be eating. It doesn't necessarily have to be substance abuse or taking something. um, but at the end of the day, you have to decide whether or not you're going to deal or depart. And that's my show today. This is the Us Review, Season 2, Episode 5, Love and Addiction, Deal or Depart. I am your host, Carla Davis Luster. You can follow me across the platforms at Ask Carla. You can purchase my novels at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, AskCarlaDL.com, and at the Volumes Bookstore at 900 North Michigan Avenue on the 5th floor. So I will be back next week. I'm not going to take another vacation like I did for July 4th. I had a great time. I went to NASCAR. Needless to say, I'll be back next Tuesday for Season 2, Episode 6. I hope you can join me or tune in and watch, the show. I do apologize for if you were on TikTok this morning. I did have some serious TikTok technological issues. So, but however, I am going to post this on TikTok as well. At the end of the day, I want to say that thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting me, and see you next week. Hi, I am Carla Davis Luster, your host. This is the Us Review. Bye-bye. Take care.